Welcome to the inaugural U.S. Hostage and Wrongful Detainee Day. Today, the State Department, the White House, and federal buildings across our nation's capital are displaying the yellow and black U.S. hostage and wrongful detainee flag for the first time. A flag that reads, "Bring them home." That's the mission we commit ourselves to, today and every day. In my pocket, I carry a list with the name of every American who is held hostage or unjustly detained. Over the past 3 years, I've been able to cross 46 names off that list as we secured the release of Americans. Today, we celebrate their freedom and the joy and relief it's brought to their loved ones. And yet we also mark another day of grave injustice, another day when dozens of our fellow citizens are held without cause by foreign governments, terrorist groups, and other non-state actors, without their rights and apart from their families. Families who, month by month, minute by minute, endure the agony of not knowing where their loved one is being held, whether they're suffering, or when they'll see them again. To those families, several of whom are here today, know this: we will keep fighting for your family members as if they were our own. We will not give up, ever. And we'll keep expanding and strengthening the tools that we have to get your loved ones back. Many are tools that you advocated for and helped shape, like the Hostage Recovery Group, which brings together the State Department, the White House, the intelligence community, and other parts of our government to coordinate our efforts to free unjustly detained Americans and provide support for their families. And like the 2020 Robert Levinson Act, which passed with bipartisan congressional support and empowers us to impose additional financial penalties and travel restrictions on the perpetrators of this heinous practice. We've teamed up with Canada to lead a group of more than 70 countries who've endorsed a declaration against arbitrary detention by states and who strive to stand together against any government that uses foreign nationals as bargaining chips. The more countries who join us in applying pressure, the more we raise the cost on perpetrators, and the more we force them to think twice before detaining additional innocent people. And that's crucial to ensuring that no one else has to live through this nightmare. Every day that we fight for the release of unjustly detained Americans, whether that we is our government, a community, a family, or an individual, we show who we are and what we value most: our freedom, our humanity, and our readiness to bring to bear the strength of an entire nation to defend the rights of a single citizen. So, thank you all for being there for our fellow Americans when they need us most, for showing who we are, for working with us to bring our people home.
I'm going to survive. I'm going to survive because I want to go back to my family. But I want to go to my family not as a burden. I'm going to go back to my family to add value, stronger than before, as a better man. So, and then, if this is my will, so my circumstance is going to be the prerequisite to move my life to the level I want. So I need to extract value to this horrendous, atrocious circumstance. This almost 5 years of being, in a dungeon, being tortured physically and psychologically, within a starvation and multiple ailments. So, but I have a why. And I think that's this is the engine of what you're taking into action. And my action was to take, go over what I truly control, because I realized that I didn't control anything in my life in prison but 3 things: my mental, physical, and spiritual health. So, and I put in practice this along the 5 years. And then the result. And the result is, your conviction that in any process in life, everything is in a temporary basis. Impermanence is what rules life. Therefore, my captivity is going to have an expiration date. That conviction and your why is to engine that. And on October the 1st, 2022, when I was flying back home, I realized, in less than 24 hours, I was in the dungeon, and now I'm in a plane enjoying a piece of fish and a glass of wine. So this is because of a reason. So I am here because of a reason. I have a mission in life, and my release was because of a reason. So that encompasses what I call the why. When I came back, so instead of, becoming a burden for my family or my family, my why translated into action, into contribution, into doing something, to find a solution to this issue on hostage diplomacy. The consequence, well, some of people in the audience knows that last year I was able to run 2 marathons and 1 half marathon. So that was my victory over the evil that brought me into that situation. And I'm keep going. I'm gonna do within my capabilities and limitations to continue that mission and that purpose in life. That, in summary, is what brought me here, and what is moving me toward finding that solution. And that mission, that meaning, that purpose is what it has integrated myself into the normal life in a positive way.
It's quite inspiring to hear and to watch from afar, and I'm just so glad that you're home with your family and doing this hard work. I want to pose one question to everybody, and then if we have time, maybe open it up to the audience. The solidarity, the unity around this issue is not something that existed. Diane knows better than anybody. My family knows that. The Levinsons know that. All of the families who dealt with this in previous years understand that all too well. The 5 of you represent captives in 5 very different places, yet there's a commonality and a shared interest, shared mission in bringing loved ones home and putting an end to this practice. I'd love it if you all just kind of chime in on what solidarity among hostage families has felt and looked like to you, and how important it's been in your own process.
It's a great question, and here again, I think there's some difference in the experience, and mostly in the case of the Israeli hostages, simply order of magnitude. In the same way that all of us here, very different places, different experiences, have a common thread. Well, because of 240 hostages that were taken on October 7th, and all of those family members in Israel and around the world, and people who understand how important getting them back was, it was almost an instantaneous, and ground up, by the way, non-governmental, completely non-governmental, in Israel, organization to lift up the hostage issue domestically and also internationally. So we immediately became part of that effort. I was actually kind of a latecomer to it because those, and it's fairly typical, without getting too deep into the reeds, we lived on a border community out in the periphery. My home was a mile from Khan Yunis, where my son, it's 15-minute bike ride from where my home used to be to where he is currently being held, and 100-something other people are being held. Our homes were destroyed, our property was looted. So it took us, there are layers of trauma. So it took people like me coming from those peripheral communities time to just take care of our families in some ways, and to somehow get our heads screwed on correctly before we could join into that movement of solidarity. But once we did, and once I did, once we did, it became clear that the one thing, and I'm curious to hear from the other panelists, the one thing that's become clear to me is that hostage taking, or the issue of hostages, and perhaps wrongly detained people as well, it touches others in a very particular way. And if correctly, we'll call it orchestrated or correctly directed, speaks to an inner humanity when interacting with other people, decision makers, and what have you. And it can, and this is, again, I'm curious to hear other experiences. We've seen it politically here in the United States, from wall to wall within an incredibly polarized political system in the United States, wall to wall solidarity with the hostage issue. Now, was that because of our advocacy, or it just would have happened no matter what? I have no way of guesstimating what the case may be. And I know that this is sort of a unique situation in any case, may not be replicable in other cases. But I do know that what our experience has taught us in the last 5 months is that mobilizing to the best of our ability, mobilizing ourselves in coordinated action amongst the hostage families and our supporters, many of whom do not have hostages in their families, have been incredibly valuable. Even if we don't know if we're moving the needle even a little bit in gaining the freedom of our loved ones. But at the very least, we don't feel alone as hostage families. And I imagine that may be fairly unique amongst the other panelists. So we, in this crazy sideways world in which we find ourselves since October 7th, this reality of great solidarity internationally. By the way, no matter what people think about the conduct of Israel's war against Hamas, and that's perhaps the most remarkable thing, people understand for the most part the subtleties between, they're not subtleties, they're realities, between the humanitarian issue of getting civilians back home to their homes, having been ripped out one fine morning in October, and this geopolitical question of warfare and how it's conducted. And for that, I'm grateful.
I'll begin by saying this. Honestly, for most of the 7.5 years. I'll begin with this. You know, for most of our 7.5-year journey, we felt like, our family at least, that we really had to go at this alone, that there was really nobody else that could actually understand what we were going through. And that was really a product of just talking to various people in and outside of the government, friends and family about the situation, and sort of pleading for their help. And then sort of all we get back is sort of empty assurances that, oh, we'll do everything we can to get Kai home. Your dad is our highest priority. We have no higher priority than the safety and security of wrongfully detained Americans, and we're doing everything we can to get them home. And, you know, at first, we really believed that message. We believed that people would listen to us, they would hear the story and connect with that and take it to heart and do whatever they could. But after years and years of waiting, we realized it wasn't working. And so I think a real turning point in recognizing that, for our family at least, was the establishment of the Bring Our Families Home campaign in May of 2022. We represented families who had such different situations. I mean, hostages, wrongful detainees, China, Iran, Venezuela, Russia, Syria, the United Arab Emirates. so many different countries, so many different circumstances, so many different lengths, so many different charges. But we found something to unite us. And that was, as I discussed earlier, the frustration of getting our own government to act. That's why the campaign was founded, and when we realized that, all these grievances that we had just trying to move the needle in our own government, they were shared among all these cases, despite the differences in the background, despite all the differences in the details, and despite the differences in what it would take to ultimately bring them all home. We shared that, and we realized that by combining our voices, we could be louder, we could move things. And I think that's the realest illustration of the power of the solidarity among the hostage families, the wrongful detainee families, that I think needs to be understood. I also think it's just been a great community because these are people who actually understand the pain of what we have been going through, and all the other hostage families. And you also get to hear stories of just such horrors. I mean, people like Miriam who don't even know where their dad is for now 7 years. People like Mark Sweden who are treated horribly in prison and sentenced to death after almost 11 years in legal limbo. And it just reminds you of the pain, but also motivates you to fight harder to bring them home.
So from the very beginning of our advocacy until with the government of trying to bring our father home, I quickly realized that from our end we were very lonely. It was just one voice trying to reach, something that was unreachable in a way. It was really difficult. Not only was it really difficult to try to reach, but it was also, just trying to navigate your own mental health through this type of situation. You feel nobody really understands the pain you're going through anymore. You're very lonely in trying to not only bring your loved one home, but trying to work with the U.S. government, trying to do anything, trying to accomplish some sort of results that could bring you comfort. That's all been an obstacle. So for us as a family, the campaign has absolutely helped raise our voice, amplify our situation, as well as bring a form of comfort. Like Harrison said, when you come together, you hear stories, you meet people, you start realizing the pain that others are going through. You somehow realize that you're not the only one, and you are, comforted in a way to realize that you can now work with these families on a much larger scale. They understand you, they support you, and now coming together, you are a much louder voice. So ever since I started in the advocacy, I was looking forward to a campaign like this. And when it was formed, I was really happy about it. And then having the opportunity to be here as well and sitting near these families that have gone through similar situations brings me a lot of comfort, because we are very lonely in this horrible journey. We're very lonely in it, and our voices are not heard when we're on our own. So we needed a campaign like this, and it's not only good to amplify our voices, but also for our mental health. Just wanted to say that.
These sort of coming together and having this unified voice and having these campaigns, it's actually a double-edged sword. Lots of good things come out of it. Mickey Bergman brought all of our families together, and that led to the campaign and led us to, creating this flag, thanks to David Ewald, who's in the audience. Lots of good things happen. But it also creates a lot of problems, and I really wish that we didn't have to create these kinds of campaigns. And I talked about this last year at the Foley dinner. We have one thing in common, and that's that our loved ones are being held hostage or detained abroad. That's it. Each case is separate. Each country is separate. The attitude of the government towards the countries that our loved ones are being detained in is different. And so it can be, first of all, it's exhausting to have these campaigns and bring families together and have these events, but your strategies are different. The way we had to advocate for Emad and Siamak and our, Murad and everyone else in Iran is very different than the way, the families have to advocate for their loved ones in Venezuela, right? And so the question is, do you dilute your private advocacy by coming together, or do you amplify it? It's both, right? We need to come together and have a voice and make sure that our country recognizes that hostage taking is a problem that affects ordinary Americans. But it's challenging because the solutions are so different, and sometimes you differ from your people in the organization and how you want to advocate. Do you want to criticize the government? Some people say don't do that because it makes it worse. Other people say, well, we have to. It's very complicated. There's no easy answer. But when you're in a desperate situation, you do everything you can. So here we are.
Well, it's talk about the family. In my case, I was a spectator on the things they were doing while I was in captivity. In my particular case, during the first 2 years and a half, I had very limited communication with my family. I spent 11 months without having any communication with my family, actually, just through intermediaries, the attorneys, or mainly the attorneys, sending messages, verbal messages. But on the family role, I have to remark just a few things. The first one is, when you are in a situation of captivity, what happened to me is that I realized that all my priorities were wrong. My priorities in life, and I had my job as a priority and so on, and and I was had a very successful career in the oil and gas business, traveling 80% of my time, and that the justification was that my job was the most important part in my life, because that is a fundamental source of resources for my family. But then when you are in a situation of activity, you say, well, your job is now irrelevant, and I do not control anything. So you come to the position where you realize that your family is the most important part in your life. And the problem is that I missed a lot of important moments from my family's life. And now I want to go back and celebrate wedding anniversaries and birthdays and special moments, and spend quality time with my children, my family in general. And I can't. It's not under my control, and I don't know if this is going to change in the future. And I recall a very special moment when we were sentenced the day of Thanksgiving in 2020. It was a Thursday, so all my family was in a reunion at home, and we were sent to prison, to El Helicoide prison. And on Sunday, Thanksgiving, the custodians were so gracious to give us a video call, a 3-minute video call with our families after being sentenced without committing any crime. So when I was able to see my wife and my daughter's face, and they were not able to articulate a word because they were just crying. And that is, I recall I was asked, what was the most painful moment during your 5-year captivity? It was that video call when I had evidence, tangible evidence of the pain that my family was suffering because of my situation. And that what I felt is that my heart split in 2 pieces. So the kind of pain that I felt was, I cannot describe that with words. I have to say another thing, that things changed whenever the families started getting together. And from the strategic standpoint, I think that that was critical and very important, because this issue of hostage diplomacy, I call it as a global thinking, local doing business model. Regardless of the country, you have a core business model that is applied in a sort of similar strategic way in Russia, in China, in Venezuela, even in the situation of Hamas in Gaza. So that we are talking about enforced disappearance of individuals. And that is perfectly defined in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court as a crime against humanity. So it's in black and white, it's in paper, it's international law. So I saw a change in the response of media and the government whenever families of hostages, regardless the country, started getting together. And the Bring Our Family Home campaign started, having activities, because that it was a consolidated voice of all the families of these hostages and wrongful detainees, approaching the media, approaching the general public, and approaching the government. So it's because this is a business model that these regimes are following, regardless the region. So and for me, as a conclusion, the true heroes of this story is the family.
Thank you all. I agree 100%. The true heroes are the families. I do want to acknowledge, though, that in years past, an event like this probably would have been possible. Senior administration officials would not have attended. Senior law enforcement officials are here today as well, and representatives of top media organizations are here. And that's a massive change. So I want to thank everybody for their dedication to this issue. I want to thank you all for sharing your tough experiences with us. And I hope that as we raise this flag this morning, people around the country remember Americans who are currently detained, who've been previously detained, and that we all work together to put an end to this scourge once and for all. Thank you all for being here. Please join us up here.
I just can't thank you enough, because as Jason said, this certainly wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. And I am so grateful to the State Department and FBI, the Biden administration, you good people, so busy taking time to hear such tough things. Talk about moral courage here, huh? And 10 years ago, I too heard that Jim was the highest priority. And that was not at all true at that time. Whereas now, you are all becoming more and more of a priority. And that's the work of all you good people here, so many of you, taking it to heart, doing your best, digging in. But the reality is, it's hard, isn't it? I mean, dealing with the captors we have to deal with, when you're talking about Syria, Iran, Russia, Hamas, you're talking about people who are the most difficult in the world to deal with. So at least now we have an A team working on it, but it's a continued challenge, isn't it? I mean, we have to find ways to deter the horror of this. There's no question about it. And I also want to so much thank third-party experts who don't even have a job in government, like Mickey Bergman, like Ryan Fahey, who's here, pro bono attorneys, media people like you, Jason, brave journalists, people who just plain care about the issue, who really care. You all, it's all of us together. We all need to do our part. And the only other thing I wanted to say, if anything good has happened, let us never forget that it is the legacy of brave Americans who were abandoned and forgotten. March 9th has been chosen because of Robert Levinson, you know, a brave public servant, devoted father, husband, you know, some of the very best of America. It's also the legacy of our son Jim, a freelance journalist, Stephen Sotloff, Kayla Mueller, Peter Kasich, Warren Weinstein, Luke Summers, so many folks. So we have done better, thanks to all of you. But we do have a ways to go. And so I thank you for caring, and I just beg you all to keep up the fight. These dear people need to come home. We need to be honest to one another, as transparent as we can. Not lie when we can't help, say the truth. We can't help you, but maybe this person can. Let's just work together to be the best we can be as a nation and have the backs of our brave people out in the world. Thank you, and God bless you all.
I'm the SPIHA Chief of Staff. I know many of you here, and if I don't, please introduce yourself to me. This is just an absolutely wonderful event. I'm so grateful for all of your insights and all of your hard work, and I'm so grateful to the Foley Foundation and the McCain Institute for working with us on this. I also want to just add, I'm continuing to be in a learning mode in this authorizations to do what we had already been doing. But it's not just because it's the right thing to do, but what I think the point you were trying to make is when we support the families, it's also a way of giving the detainees hope. And to take one thing off your plate so that you know that your families are being taken care of by their government, so you can do what you need to do to get through each day. It was a very important moment when you told me that story, and I just want to thank you for that. It's something that we think about in our partners in the White House. And you know, Roger always says SPIHA is a team sport. We have the entire U.S. government resources at our disposal at the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell, in the intelligence community, Health and Human Services, Department of Education to help with student loan issues. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do, but ultimately, it's bringing our people home and how we bring them home so that they're in a way to add value to their families and their communities. So I just want to, as a member of the U.S. government, I want to thank my partners here for understanding the role that we all play in supporting families and how that is connected to bringing our people home safe and sound. So we have a little bit of logistics here. So the plan is we're going to walk out the same way you came in, where your coats are. The first row is, we'd like to ask the first row and the panelists to leave first. A member of the SPIHA team will help you get your coat. Feel free to grab a pastry and a piece of coffee on your way out. We'll all walk out together to C Street to the flagpole ceremony. Thank you all for being here. If you have any questions, grab anyone from the SPIHA team. You'll need to turn your badge in to a member of the SPIHA team as you exit the building. Thank you.
So would be the State Department if that didn't happen, right? So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. And when I look at the face of everyone out there, they're the people that have been with us in this fight for quite some time. So thank you for all your steadfast support over the years, and not only bringing people home and taking care of their families, but in making this day happen. Today's something that doesn't happen too often, and that's we're raising another flag up the flagpole with the flag of the United States. I'm reminded when I see the U.S. flag of all the things that it stands for. It represents our freedom, it represents our rights as individuals, it represents our shared values, and it represents who we are as Americans. There are many flags that get to go up and fly with the American flag. And today we're flying the hostage and wrongful detainee flag for the first time. This flag will remain as a symbol of U.S. government's commitment to taking care of the families and bringing your loved ones home. I hope you know that if you're held overseas, or if you're the family of someone held overseas, the United States is with you on this, your government's with you on this, and we'll stop at nothing until your loved ones come home. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Deputy Secretary of State Kirk Campbell, who will offer some words and raise this flag. Sir.
Friends, this is a solemn day. This is a solemn day. This is a solemn day, but it's an honor to welcome you all here to the State Department. I see friends from every part of the U.S. government, from the White House, the National Security Council, colleagues that work on this at the State Department, the Department of Defense, but most importantly, I see families and friends that are so committed to this important purpose. And we are here indeed on a solemn day. It's a lovely day, but it's an important day, and we must mark it as we go forward. So on behalf of President Biden, Vice President Harris, Secretary Blinken, and every one of my colleagues here throughout the government, and particularly the Department of State, welcome to you. It is my honor to preside over this important ceremony. I want to take a moment to thank someone who is tireless, relentless, absolutely committed to this issue, hammers on our doors at all times of night to make sure that we do not forget. Presidential Special Representative Envoy Roger Parsons, please go ahead. Colleagues, it's not just him, it's others on his staff. I see my friend Josh from the White House that are working on this in a very determined way. They work every single day to bring home Americans who are wrongfully detained or held hostage abroad. And I'd particularly like to recognize the formerly detained individuals, their families, and the families of current hostages and wrongful detainees who are here today. Could I ask you just for a moment to raise your hands, and we will pay respects to you. Because of your consistent, tireless advocacy and your partnership with Congress and through the many organizations that are also present with us today, we are commemorating the first U.S. hostage and wrongful detainee day with this flag. We're going to raise this flag in a few moments, and we're going to remember this as we go forward. The strongly bipartisan congressional legislation creating this day and designating this flag is a powerful reminder of the unity behind our unwavering commitment to bring Americans held hostage and wrongfully detained home. And I do want to just say a moment that this makes another reason why the United States is unique. We, among all nations, are relentless in these pursuits. The symbolism of both the date, March 9th, and the design of this flag carry particular significant meaning. It is a day to celebrate those who have returned home, but also to recognize those Americans still unjustly held overseas, and the work that needs to continue to be done immediately to secure their release. It is also a day to remember and honor those who won't be coming home. And including the man for whom the Levinson Act is named, Robert Bob Levinson. He was an FBI agent who served for 22 years and a DEA agent for 6. Bob was abducted in Iran 17 years ago on March 9, 2007. On Sunday, he will be celebrating his 76th birthday. His case remains open. His legacy will never be forgotten. In a few moments, we will be raising the flag, and I want to just talk for a few minutes about the symbolism. The State Department will solemnly raise the flag each year and whenever a hostage or wrongfully detained returns from abroad or dies in captivity. Many of you here contribute to the flag's design, its creation, and its ultimate adoption. Its yellow color represents what has become an iconic symbol of hope for hostages and detainees' safe release. I cannot possibly imagine what it's like to have a loved one held hostage or being wrongfully detained overseas, to be unsure of their condition, how long they will be held, or when or if you will be reunited with them. The families know this better than anyone, and they can pay tribute to this. And it's why they emphasize the flag's tally marks as a central attribute to constantly remind us. The marks represent the days loved ones have spent in captivity and the parallel counting and suffering by their families. These tally marks reinforce the flag's call to action, to bring them home, but also to deter future detentions and to marshal the international community to end this practice forever, this heinous practice forever. This is a charge that myself, the Secretary, Roger, the entire team takes to heart. I want you to know the United States government is with you, and we will work tirelessly until you are reunited with your loved ones. Today's ceremony is a solemn recognition of those who have returned home, those who regrettably never will, and those still being held captive abroad. It also gives us the opportunity to recommit ourselves, to truly recommit ourselves, to stand united against the scourge of hostage diplomacy, and to reaffirm the principles of peace, justice, and human dignity for all. It's why President Biden declared hostage-taking and wrongful detention a national emergency in 2022. It's why Secretary Blinken carries a card with him with the names of every arbitrary detained American around the world. I will tell you, I'm honored that Roger presented me with my own card. I'm having it laminated. I will carry it with me always. It's why we are gathered here today as we remember the detainees and hostages and their families. Our hearts, our love will go out to all of you, and it's why we remember our duty to them as we raise this flag. So join with me and let's raise this flag together.
concludes our ceremony. Thank you again for attending.